you've really heard a challenge framed, across two very different contexts, right? And in listening to the challenge that I sort of hear is that radicalization is really about the process by which illicit actors hijack impressionable young minds and exploit them for criminal purposes. As people that have worked in the solution space in two other different contexts, to our two colleagues here, what do you hear as some of the potential problem-solving ideas?
Well, I mean, this has been really fascinating to me because I am amazed at how young people gravitate towards extreme. I mean, both out of curiosity and but if there is an organized message of recruitment, it happens without the adults knowing anything about it, meaning that that world exists and the adults aren't really connected to it at all. There are two things I found very interesting. One is that one of the places that people know our work the best is in prison. And I was just stunned. I said, people know, I said, oh yeah, Jeff, you're like a hero in there. And the reason is because the prisoners understand if they had been in my program, they probably wouldn't have been in prison. It was clear that I believe a certain set of circumstances led these kids to do these things and end up in this place. And so here they have somebody saying, oh yeah, I know how you ended up there and we're trying to stop you. And in most places there was no adult trying to stop young people when they were at that impressionable age. The second thing is that I have a lot of my young people who are organizing around negative areas using the internet. So we aren't, I told you I'm old, so we're not connected to it, right? But they are, and we don't really know what's going on. The last thing I'll say, just as a potential solution, one of the interesting things that happened when Amex decided to do the commercial and put us on it. I have met, and people think it hadn't helped with fundraising and stuff like that. What has happened is I meet people all over the country who say to me, you know what, I am so happy to see that somebody is doing something because it's the brand issue. It's like there is a brand out there that says there's an answer, and then if there's an answer in Harlem, there's probably an answer in South Central and other things. And that's one of the areas that I think we haven't really exploited. Folks who create brands and really get people identified. I agree with you. Everybody knows Al-Qaeda. I don't know a positive brand, right? If you were to say, so I haven't heard of anything, and the question is why? Because if I'm young and if I'm on the edge, where do I hook into?
You're from New York, yeah?
I'm from New York.
Right, so of course the whole controversy there at the moment with the Park 51 Center. So we're involved in trying to develop a positive message as an alternative. So we discredit the clash of civilizations rhetoric. So many people are pushing out there that Islam and the West are at war with each other. I mean, that's a false paradigm. Huntington's theory is incorrect. The true clash is between and within Muslims fighting for democratic rights versus those who are totalitarian, trying to control the vast majority of Muslims. It's not Muslims versus the West. So on the 6th of October, I mention this because you're from New York, I'm debating a motion. It's an intelligence squared debate organized in New York on the 6th of October. The motion is Islam is a religion of peace. And opposing the motion is one of the most prolific voices who is a critic of Islam, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. But what we're trying to do, and we would like your support for this, is to develop a positive image, because without that positive image, there's nothing for the young people to grab onto, and they will be attracted to the negative brand. And that's what's happening at the moment. So your support would be welcome.
I'd be thrilled to be supportive of this.
Alberto, let me ask you about role models, and then ask both Majid and Paul and Jeff if you want to comment on it. We spoke yesterday about the importance of role models who can be powerful figures either in shaping negative sentiments or shaping positive sentiments. Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wanted to take up on what Paul was saying before. One of the things we've found is that the mothers of these guys, of these boys, of these young men are incredible. They do everything. They're the mother, they're the father, they're everything, right? Now, there's one problem, that mother needs a father next to her to develop these young men. What tends to happen around 12, 13 years old, the mechanism is that they just go out, they need that male role model, that should be the father. They need the male role model. Who do they go after? They go after a leader. They're not going to go after a loser. They're going to look for the hitman. They're going to look for the drug dealer. They're going to look for the head of the gang. And that's their new role model that they're going to latch onto. And without their even being conscious of it, they enter these gangs, and then they can't help it. Then how do you get out? Once you get in, there's no way out. So for me, you know, one of the programs that should really be sort of worked on is how to rebuild fatherhood. I mean, it sounds corny, but how to rebuild this for these guys, and why do they come to Project Alcatraz? They're looking for that role model, the positive role model. In that case, it's Jimmy, it's myself, and they want to be somebody else. They don't want to be stuck there killing people or trafficking drugs. They're just like all of us. Mm-hmm. You know, they've got huge potential. They're bright. You've got some geniuses there, and all of that potential is being flushed away.
Now, Majid, Paul, do you agree with what Alberto's saying? And then can you comment a little bit on, you know, who are some of the positive and negative role models that you saw growing up who could have had either an exacerbating impact on your recruitment or a potential diverting impact on your recruitment?
Please.
You know, I'd have to agree with Alberto, and it's similar to what Majid explained a little while ago. It's extremely difficult to get out once you're in. So there's some similarities there, and also, I mean, for me, it was, you know, protection, because even if you don't want to be a gang member, if you live in the neighborhood, the kids from the other side of the street are going to pick on you. So what are your options? Do you not join the gang that you're familiar with and just let these kids beat you, or do you join the gang and then the numbers are kind of even out and maybe they won't pick on you as much? That happens a lot. So a lot of times it's kind of like by force, not by choice, you know, kind of choosing the less of two evils. And it's hard, it's extremely difficult, but I think that father figure is key. Looking for somebody to kind of aspire to be, the power, the respect, the love, or what have you. The unfortunate thing is that gang members, young gang members, don't realize the consequences that come with that decision until it's too late, until they're deep into the gang, full of tattoos, in prison, and then it's like, oh my gosh, what the heck did I just do?
Majid, and then we'll come back to you, Albert.
So there's actually another overlap between us, which is statistically in the US, so many prisoners who are in prison for gang-related offenses are converting to a radical interpretation of Islam. And they're doing that because they're angry. So what we have at the moment is the demand for an extreme message out there that people are joining on the ground. There is no demand being created for a positive message. And I think that when I joined at 16, it's really sad to say that you'd think it's one of the biggest problems in the world, not just in the States. Islamist radicalization is one of the biggest problems. There was no positive role model that I could look to and say, I'm going to channel my anger in this direction. I only had the negativity in front of me saying, you're oppressed, you're downtrodden, look at Bosnia, look at what happens to Muslims in Europe. So join us, be angry, and cause revolution in the world. And that's what we quite literally did. You know, we had members of armies recruited to our group attempting military coups in countries like Pakistan. They were arrested in 2003. People that I recruited had their backs broken in torture. It's just anger after anger after anger. And I think that it's sad to say that at the moment there is no prominent and visible positive alternatives. We're using music, we're using arts and culture, we're using democratic messages to try and get young people to once again make it as unfashionable as communism has become to join Al-Qaeda, and to try and make the democratic message and pluralism and tolerance and respect something that's trendy and fashionable to be associated with. Salman over there, he's a good friend, he's helping. We need other musicians, other artists, all of us in a coalition to try and make the positive role model attractive once again.
Our red light is on, so we do need to finish up. And I'm going to give Majid and Paul the last words here, but let me frame something for you before you do that, because I want you to address your last words at the audience. You know, again, going back to the spirit of Zeitgeist being a place of action. You know, you listen to scholars who are experts on radicalization and gangs. You look at you know, what the media tells us. You look at even what, you know, government's trying to do. They all tell us it's a battle for the hearts and minds of young people, right? But the question we have is it really, when I hear you both speak, when I hear Jeffrey, you, when I hear Alberto, you as well, it sounds to me like it's less a battle for the hearts and minds and it's more a challenge of alternatives. So given that it's a challenge of alternatives, you have a whole audience of people here that know how to build things. They build applications, they build programs, they build things that actually for commercial purposes have that natural effect of diverting at-risk young people away from recruitment. You know, what should all these people do? What's your call to action for all of them?
I would say it has to be a comprehensive, collaborative approach, similar to what we're trying to do with the Better LA in Los Angeles, and people have to come to the table with what Will.i.am discussed earlier and the stuff that he's doing. The amazing work that Jeffrey's doing in education, that's a big component of it. And then what Alberto's doing, and it's similar to working with extremists. You know, the administration used to have an approach of we won't sit at the table with anybody who's on this list as a terrorist. Well, we have the approach where you know, now the new administration says we'll sit down and have a dialogue for peace with anybody that's willing to sit down and have a dialogue. And that's what we do with gang members. If they're willing to sit down and talk and say, how can we work this out, provide you with some jobs, tattoo removal, get you out of the situation that you're in, then let's do it.
Majid?
I tour Pakistan. I've spoken to over 10,000 students who are vulnerable to joining some of the more angry organizations in that country. And what I would request to everyone here is help me create this as a brand. I mean, this is one of the most significant civilizational challenges of our time. And we need to develop positive role models. We need to create a self-sustaining model. And that requires artists, cultural figures. It requires businessmen to come in and help me create this as a sustaining brand. Because in Pakistan at the moment, we're trying to launch this nationwide movement to promote democratic values and challenge extremism. But the problem we're having is, of course, when you talk about challenging extremism, it's, many people want to step back because they're worried about being targeted, quite legitimately so. But we need to be as brave as those people who are willing to risk death and torture and imprisonment for angry ideas. And we should be just as willing to risk and sacrifice all of that for our own convictions. Mm-hmm. So my challenge to everyone would be to help me develop this brand. We're working day in, day out to try and do this, but we're lacking resources and we're lacking that self-sustaining model.
Majid, Paul, Jeff, Alberto, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Alberto.